We're recording.
Oh.
We're recording both video and audio, but the video is only internal. And we're not zooming it.
Okay.
This is a public meeting, but we're not zooming it public.
In audio only,
Pardon me?
no video, just audio only.
Oh, okay. Hey, Joe.
Call meeting to order, roll call.
Ms. Buckout?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Sure.
Right, are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, moving forward. So as you can see, we do not have a quorum, so this is just a discussion only meeting. All right, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, as we normally do with finance committee, we try to get together once the internal staff has had an opportunity to review where we've been this year, what things are looking like for next year, put the budgets together. Have the discussion with the finance committee, provide some documents at the board meeting for September, high level draft information, and then October we're required to have the budgets approved so that we can get the information and renew the lease trustee effective November 1. So those are the time constraints and the reasons for making sure that we do get the budgets for the October board meeting. It was interesting. I took a look at 2004, 2014, and 2024. What we're kind of looking back, or really 2023 or 2023 year end. And in 2004, we did about 2.8 million in operational revenue and about 3.5 million in room tax revenue. In 2014, we did about 3.9 million in revenue operationally and about 4.8 million in room tax revenue. This year, we're probably going to end at 10 million on a budget of 8.6. And last year we did 9 million. And then room tax revenues are probably going to end up about 10.2, 10.3. Could go as high as 10.5. It just we've been looking at the occupancy levels, and I think we've flattened out on where we are occupancy wise, and rated has actually flat year on year for the first time. Well, last month we've seen 2 months in a row where average rate in the marketplace is flat basically to last year. We're up at $1 in August to last year, but we've been up as much as $14, $15. So we see a flattening in the market which I think is good. We haven't seen the drop of about 2,000 room nights has been fairly consistent now, year on year analysis. So I think again the demand is where it's going to be. Rate I think is going to be flat, or it's flattened out year on year. So we're not going to see these huge increases again. Next year it just doesn't look like it. We've got new supply in the market out by Topgolf, and then we have some downtown hotels that will open in April. One hotel by Topgolf is open, 2 more. Another one's going to open before year end, and then there's another one that's under construction. It's a Marriott out there. Not dramatic, but they're inside the district. So there may be a shift from the hotels on the west side of Eagle Road out by St. Luke's. There may be more of an increase in demand on the east side, which is in the district, the west side or not. So there could be some positive influence. We're looking about 11 million for room tax for next year. I'll let these guys get more into that. But I thought the 10 and 20 year analysis of where we were, and then obviously East had so much impact after it opened. And I remember back in 2004 and 2005 when Chuck Everett and I would go to we were trying to get the expansion going in 2004 and 5, and we took it to an election. And so I was in these neighborhood meetings, and Chuck was telling the attendants, people who were attending the meeting, that it's going to fail. They don't need it. It's going to, the burden is going to fall on the taxpayers, which are you in the audience, and that sort of thing. And when a bunch of back then, that they were the old people in the audience, and now I'm the old person in the audience. But they were mostly retirees and that sort of thing. They hear the word tax and the burden, and all of a sudden you're shot out of the water. So then when we took it to the Supreme Court and we went the different route, which didn't make some of the constituents happy, that we didn't take it to a vote. It's the success, I think, speaks for itself. And Chuck and I are friends, and so I reached out to him and said, by the way, we didn't fail. In fact, here's where we are. And he kind of chuckled. So anyway, the fact of the matter is that we have been very successful. But as Allie and Carrie sort of teed it up last month, and as you've been hearing over the course of the last several months, that the revenue increases, I think, have been as much a result of our managing the demand and the groups that we have and trying to recognize the local groups as well as the economic impact, particularly over the last year. I think that's probably been the one driving force that has driven the revenues to 10 million, is the fact that we've been able to manage the business. And we will, and that's how we're looking at next year. Bottom line is we're running out of space. I mean, we're practically at capacity. So as we've gotten into the budget season, I want to say it's been an easy budget season. We switched over to Questico and all that. And we talked about that, but the team has done great in changing a new software program, and it's a great software program. But the easy part is that because we're pretty much at capacity, it's down to managing the groups and what's coming in. So the dramatic, and I know Jody has considered sandbagging along the way from the executive director. And I can assure you that your new executive director does not buy into that concept nearly to that which I've been accused of. But it's protected the district all this time, and I quite frankly done a great job with it. And I think the board, I think the message that I really want to pass on to you before I turn it over to these guys is that we worked really, really hard to make sure that we give you as the board the opportunity to hold your heads very high when you see the constituents out there and you talk about the quality. And because of your support, the board's support of our capital improvements, I mean, we hear it all the time. Clearwater was just in with 800 people and 700 people, and they were here all week. And, you know, we were hearing people from all over the world. And we were hearing left and right how great the food was, how beautiful the facility was, how nice the people were. And we hear that all the time. And we have that in most of our, practically all of our comments. It's a rare exception when we don't get fives, and mostly fives and a couple of fours in our reviews. So again, with your support, we've been able to maintain the facilities, and that's not going to change unless the board makes alternate decisions down the road. Where I'm going with this, though, is that again, our capacity is now limited, and so over the next, for the foreseeable future, that's going to be the key, because costs are going to continue to go up. Labor, particularly, cost of supplies is going to go up. Food costs actually have started to flatten. So our, you know, again, the supply side on particularly proteins, that kind of thing, we haven't seen, knock on wood, you know, the bird flu and all that, you know, a lot of that has gone to the side. So a lot of our protein costs have actually come down. So we're happy about that. But again, cost of labor, particularly, and cost of other supplies and materials continues to go up. So that's going to be the challenge that these guys are going to have for the next few years. So with that, turn over to Anne Marie.
Thanks, Pat. Last year, we're trying to follow the same process we did last year. So last year we had the finance committee meeting. We talked very high level, presented more of our business plan and where we were headed for next year. Then we put together the comparison. We'll provide the comparison at the board meeting in September. We won't, I shouldn't say present, we will provide it. It will be just passed around for everybody to take a look at over the next month. If there's questions, then I would like everybody, you know, to reach out to me with any questions, comments, or concerns. We'll make our edits, and then we'll present a final comparison to the board, like as Pat said, in October. So I guess my question to you is, did that process work last year? Did you like the way it worked? Was there something you would like different this year in the process?
Well, Madam Chair, I think the board expects us to have seen the numbers.
Oh, absolutely. You'll get the numbers at the board meeting next week.
Well, I won't, because I'll be in Spain.
Oh, well, I will email them to you. How's that?
We'll have numbers for a month.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want.
Yep. So what we thought here, we'll talk about the high level, where we're going, where we see transfers. And what we think revenues are going to be, where we're gonna finish up the year, but we don't have documents to present today. Because we still need to do some more fine tuning on the budget. It's not at a level that we would want to make public. And we'll have those numbers to you next week. So I'm gonna turn it over to Cody.
Madam Chair. Where in the process do we set reserves?
It's part of the budget process. My thought with reserves is that we are going to need to increase them. We had it at 7 million, we dropped it back to 6. But as we've grown, we set aside a certain amount based on expenses, and as our revenues have increased, so have our expenses. So we need to take a look, and I have a process that I go through that calculates what the next level of the reserves are. So as we go through the next month, and then we'll make a proposal at the November board meeting, or the October board meeting, as to what we want to increase the reserves to. We'll also make, at the October board meeting, we'll also make all of the recommendations for the committed funds in the budget, which is in the financial statements that ties to the new budget.
And can we talk about that before we present it at the October board meeting, like,
Yes.
right?
Well, the reserve, since I've been here, seems to be set with limited board involvement.
Yeah, so.
We get to comment after the fact.
Yeah, so before it was based on a formula and it would fluctuate every year. And I think that got to be where it was kind of too much change, right? So we're like, okay, we don't need to be fluctuating and figuring this out every year. And so we kind of just set it at 6 and just left it there. What year did we do that in?
Oh, it's been
quite a while.
yeah.
18.
It's a couple of years.
Yeah, quite a while.
And
Before
it's-
COVID.
Yeah, it was
But
way
it's a
before.
guideline, right?
But it's a guideline and, and I
It's
think
not a-
that's what you're talking about is looking at that formula and looking at to see if we would need to increase. But it just, it got to the point where it was going up. I think it was supposed to go up quite a bit and we're like, oh, if we need that. And so let's just set it at 6 and we called it a day. And so since that point in time, that's why we really haven't fiddled with it at all.
I mean, to have a follow-up meeting a week before the board meeting in
And
October.
yeah, I think that would
To
be good.
do this again in October
I
and
think that
have
would be good.
hard numbers at
Yeah.
that point.
Because then because I don't want to have to, spend so much time at the October board meeting with the entire board involved on some of these finer details to where, you and I can maybe hammer them out prior to.
I'm in for that.
I'll take a moment to kind of explain my approach is a little different than Pat's and years prior, as you spoke about that. I've appreciated the more conservative budget that we've had, but my goal for this year is to get more close to what we realistically think is gonna happen and to use the budget as a management tool. So me and Emery are kind of really sharpening our pencil. I'll use some examples on forecasting for prior years where we were kind of about 50% on the books going into the year, going into budget season. At this point in time, we're a little about 80% forecasted on the book. So we've got about 20% that we're estimating now. I think we're gonna finish the year on the budget side at about 10.5. Again, that's gonna fluctuate based on changes if something happens, but I believe that's a realistic number for next year for 2024. So that would be about a $500,000 increase from what we're estimating 2023 will finish at this point in time.
And why are you higher on is it just people that have signed contracts more?
Yep. Getting better and a little bit more sharpening our pencil on using the historicals and the data that we've got to forecast more closely. That's part of it. And then a little bit stronger of an approach to the event managers and the sales managers to hammering down those forecasts a little sooner. So I'm feeling really good about the process that we took this year.
So
And-
I think what you just said is give or take 5% increase.
Yes, correct. Yep. So
And that is capacity limit.
we're getting very close to capacity at this point in time. Yes, with our space, we've got again leftover, again about a few dates here and there, some in August, and August tends to be kind of a dependent on how the year goes. What groups are willing to jump into those dates in the summer when people are still traveling. But we know obviously December holiday parties are still gonna pick up, so we do still have those gaps that naturally exist as we go into the budget season. But we know what those tend to fill out looking like, so there's less estimates, I guess, than there has been in the years prior, because we know what that business tends to come in at and look like. So we take our short-term booking and kind of average out what those dollar amounts are, and then start to plug those into the remaining events that we believe we're gonna have. And so we're looking at about 70 conventions, 200 local events for next year is our goal. 11 million in the tax revenues is what we're estimating would come in on the hotel side, as Pat said on that. And then really just using this as an opportunity as like I said, a management tool. I want there to be, if there's a variance inside of the budget or inside of the statements, that the management will see that more and be able to adjust to that from month to month.
What do we think of in terms of a planning period? Do we plan 3 years out, 5 years out, 20
For the calendar, the
for our
planning
business?
for our business, usually a 2 to 5, but really we're,
My bottom line is, are we a growth business?
yes.
We were, I think at this point, we're flattening out, right? We
We're
only have so
stagnating.
much space and we're in that, if you think of the utilization chart, we're in that green bandwidth. So I think where our potential comes from is, as Cody indicated, is filling in the calendar. So if we have an event here, can we bring somebody in that will maybe take the same menu? And it's a smaller group, but it's not gonna take more staff, so that we can take the revenue with less and not have all the expenses related to it. But it's gonna be, our potential at this point really is any price increases we can do, plus the fill-in that we can do. And then, since growth is slowing down, we now have the opportunity to start working on becoming more efficient and streamlining our processes and trying to work on lowering our costs. We can do better lowering our costs than we can increasing our revenues.
So unless we add more space, that we're kind of,
We're hitting that saturation
Yeah.
point. Yep,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
Chris, that, our mission is to attract business and help build facilities to attract business. Which we really can't do. I mean, just maintain, right?
well, right now maintain, right? Because we've got the income now, rent coming in from the aquatics facility, so we're not gonna see huge bumps until we add another project,
Thank you.
right? Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, when you talk about the 2, 3, 4, 5 year plan, right? That's the elephant in the room kind of is, what do we look like in 5 years? Are we going to just be this convention center and we're gonna stay at where we're at and this is all we're gonna do? Or are we going to save money to build a different facility, expand this facility? What does that look like?
I think Ally should speak to that. a
Well, and
little
I think they're right, our calendar is definitely filling in, I think we've been really efficient on like getting our repeats in there, we're fairly confirmed for FY '24, there's not a lot of big gaps to fill in. What I think could be interesting and maybe some potential for incremental revenue growth is looking at some different concepts, which is what we're working on right now with the CVB, kind of this campus style concept. Freeman was a perfect case study for it. You know, I think there's opportunities to bring in big groups that use venues outside, in addition to Boise Center. So,
Why don't you explain what Freeman did?
yeah, exactly. So
I didn't hear
Freeman,
that, I'm sorry.
Freeman, it's a major company that was just here a month ago, and they have a multi-unit approach to their meetings. So that's what I asked her to explain to you guys.
so Freeman is, they're basically a contractor for events. They're like the largest event contractor on the globe. They set up events, they do event strategy. They're the people that come into a building and will put up pipe and drape or build out booths, different activations. They basically bring events to life and they travel around the country.
Chris, have you ever used Freeman?
I have, but it's been a while. I've used some of their competitors. more
Largest
recently.
Yeah.
national decorator.
What was really a big win for us is Freeman doesn't have a big presence in Boise, as far as like executing events in Boise. They do have an office here. Their VP of like data strategy is actually from Boise. Freeman acquired his company several years ago, and he's on our customer advisory board. So he was a huge champion in bringing their leadership meeting to Boise this summer. And what they did, what they had to do, well, I suppose they didn't have to, but what they did was a really smart approach. He, Ken, Holsinger is his name, has been an advocate for creating kind of like a campus for events, and he wanted to use Boise as like the perfect example of how you can successfully execute it. And so what they did is they used Boise Center for staging, for office space, and also for a reception here. They took sessions to Jump. They had sessions at the Egyptian Theater. They used Treefort Music Hall. And so they kind of really had this like immersive experience for their attendees, which are all Freeman employees and executives and leaders within the company. And they showed how you can do a campus style event. I think with events, people are more and more selective on the events that they go to. So what Freeman likes to do is kind of partner with their clients who also happen to be event planners and saying, look, this is a way to do it. You attract new attendees. The younger generation is looking for a more local, rich experience. And that's something that we have to offer in Boise, just because everything is so accessible. So I think there's opportunities for us to target some of those executive, corporate kind of retreat type events that can replicate that campus experience. So there's some opportunity, and those are typically going to be high revenue generating. They're spending money on their own employees to come to this meeting. It could represent some new room nights that haven't been to Boise. I think where opportunities are is going to be targeting just some different types of events versus like our association, which are wonderful. They're our bread and butter. But to Anne Marie's point and Cody's point, I mean, we're looking at kind of incremental opportunities now versus like the big swings in revenue. Because we really have reached that point of like, we're full, especially with considering the repeats that we take, managing that against the local events that are here every year.
So when we look at our strategic planning, it includes all of these facilities next door and across the street that aren't ours, but affect capacity. I mean,
From a hotel side, is that what you're speaking? Talking about hotels on the hotel side?
I'm talking about Jump,
Jump, I got you.
hotel, the ballrooms, all the places you mentioned, the Egyptian and whatnot.
And I think I missed what the second part you were saying to that campus concept.
Well, do I think of the Boise Center capacity to include those facilities?
Well, I think it opens up opportunities to maybe take bigger groups, if they're willing to use buildings outside of just Boise Center. Some of the feedback we got from the customer advisory board members last week was it was a strong yes. They love the concept that Freeman executed. Our job and what we'll coordinate with Visit Boise is bringing all of those other partners to the table and saying, looking at what worked well with Freeman, where we could address some hurdles and making it kind of a more collaborative package sale to the clients that we're working with. We can show them this is how we execute it, maybe just make it easier for them to do.
How often do we use the university?
For space, not very often. They are a good resource for lead generation. We have professors or administrators that work there that attend events around the country and want to bring that conference to Boise. We've had several of those. In fact, we've got a couple next year. One of them is Association for Computing Machinery. 2 professors became the local host committee to bring that to us next fall. So they're a great resource, but for space, not so much.
And I'd kind of speak to just the demand of the groups above 500 and the space that isn't available for that. Those groups that were 300 a couple years ago have now grown to that 500, 550, so they're starting to compress on the Boise Center side because the space that they need, they can't get at another one of these other locations.
So we really are flatlined. I'm
We're
trying to
seeing that
figure out how we
5%,
get to
5%
10%
increase.
growth from 5% growth.
Yes, and that 5%, I've got an anticipated room rate increase coming in June, so that's gonna help a little bit there. But really, the space is kind of the mix of that, what we've talked about going into this, and we did that for 2024, and that 50-50 approach to revenue and economic impact. 25 is coming closer to getting already booked at this point in time. We're already seeing a lot of that get penciled in at this point. So if we wanna shift, we've really gotta be a year and a half to 2 years out off of that kind of 50-50 approach to economic impact and revenue. And again, it's gonna be based on what the sales team can provide. I think there are opportunities and Freeman's a really great piece of business where it does both. It does the revenue generation for Boise Center and brings the economic impact, and that's the win-win if we can focus on those.
And what was the attendance at that?
Around 350, so it wasn't huge, but what hopefully, and I think what we will see the impact is just their position in the market, and they work with thousands of clients around the world, and so now their top leaders and their top sellers that have been here have experienced Boise, and what we've heard over and over again from the people that put on the event, Freeman, was that it was the best event that they've ever held. And Ken actually presented to the customer advisory board last week. So we'll have a deck from him. We have testimonials from them. They've actually already been tapped into for an article that should come out later this fall. And they're what's the word I'm looking for, not reliable, but they're considered thought leaders in the industry. So that should be impactful.
So I mean, I guess the downside of that campus concept is that less revenue into the center side, right? Because they're going to these other venues.
Potentially, potentially, but you have to anticipate that events coming to Boise, they come to the destination, not to the building, right?
Right.
They want to experience the Basque block and hold
Right.
things offsite, but I see what you're saying, there is potential.
That's the thing, it's like, how does that necessarily increase revenue for the Boise Center? I mean, could it be that you could bring larger groups or fit more groups in, or?
And honestly, they do some food and beverage here. That's the part. They did a little on that side, but honestly, conventions that bring both all that concept of food and beverage and the room nights, that's
Right.
really the pie in the sky. that we're really aiming
And the
for.
AV and the, right,
Yeah,
all the,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, like the Botanical Society of
Botanical.
America is a perfect example.
I mean, from a planner side, I think the campus concept is super cool because then you can get to experience more of the city, especially with us, it's walkable. You don't have to have transportation to get around, which, is ideal. But, from the center side, it's like, well, how does that necessarily?
But the district gets a win. You get it through.
Right,
events.
that's true.
So, and if they're doing the campus concept, the amount of space actually used at Boise Center is compacted. And so you can
You can
book
fit more. Yeah.
book other business
You can
around
fit
it
more
while they
groups in.
use our facility.
That's
They were
true.
using 110s as their sort of base of operations. So if they just took the 110s, but you had everything else open, so you've got this group of, let's say 300 that are roaming around Boise, but they're only using 110. Well, you can book conventions or other local events around that space, but even local events that drive the revenue. So there's a way to mix it
Yeah.
and match it and be able to accommodate, other stuff here at the center while, again, you're driving the room nights, which drives room nights. So the district gets the benefit, not necessarily totally Boise Center, but you can still book around it. And, the challenge, quite frankly, that I think Ally and Carrie are gonna have to carry the torch on is more cooperation with the hotels to get the bigger groups. And I think that seeing the rate flatten year on year, I think that's actually a good sign, because if the
Yeah, a little
market has
more.
finally leveled out, maybe the hotels will start to see more opportunity to open up bigger room blocks.
Right.
Next year, we've got the Ladies of the Nile coming in, and there's 1,200.
Yeah, but we're anticipating about 4,000 room nights from that one. It took every property to participate.
Well, and that's a cooperative between the arena and Boise Center.
Madam Chair, can I
Mhm.
pursue this room thing a little bit? I don't understand, obviously you do.
Yeah, so I mean,
I
if
mean, we're
they're,
all in the same
if they're not,
game, right?
yeah, but if they, so the hotels aren't getting the high room revenue from transient business,
Uh-huh.
and the room block that they would give to a convention is typically lower.
Oh.
So they'd be more apt to, if they're not getting, $30 more or $40 more a night for a transient business, they're more likely to open it up to group business, say, sure, it's only a $10 difference or whatever, we'll give you more rooms. So that they can make sure they book those rooms versus letting them go for a smaller margin, right?
Or leave it more open, yeah.
Ally, what's the, I saw where the legislature upped the per diem. Is per diem rooms 175 now?
I think it went up from 149 to 165.
Okay, so if you're traveling on government, you're paying $165. And we're gonna and we wanna do a regional or a Northwest forestry convention. So they can only pay $165, but when the average transient rate is 300 or 250, we'll say, I mean, 250 is probably pretty realistic. And a hotel says, well, I can take 165 or I can get 250. And the ownership is driving revenue management and RevPAR and that ROI for their investment. The GM and the revenue manager are booking the higher rates. So they might, instead of giving us the 100 rooms that we need, they might give us 50 or 30 or 45. So.
Cause that's really a pinch point too, right? Is
Absolutely,
the
that's where that balancing act comes in.
number of rooms.
But we have the potential to do 1,000, 1,200 person convention. Or, I mean, there's been other times where ironically, we've been able to do 2 conventions of 300, 400 at the same time. And yet the hotels were able to accommodate, but it's because those particular groups were willing, again, they're like an ag group or a government related group that, they have cars, they drive in. The regional meetings where the attendees have cars, and so they'll stay wherever the per diem rate is given, and that can be out by the airport, or it can be Park Center, wherever. They don't have to be downtown.
So in short, we need more convention space and we need more hotel rooms
Yes.
We need
to
we need
affect-
a hotel with more hotel rooms.
Yeah, right, yes, right, not the,
But in convention space would help as well, more
Right,
space. is
yeah, in
obvious.
order to really bump the revenue to the next level.
I mean, we can-
Well, and the email that Chase sent out, or that I forwarded from Chase, I mean, that's the challenge that we were looking at over with the CWI folks. I mean, cost of construction now is 520 a square foot for a facility like this. And what we were looking at was 110,000 square foot facility, basically just a bigger Boise Center, a bigger ballroom and some meeting space. I mean, we were looking at some elaborate facility, and they came back at 110,000 square feet, you're looking at 50 million plus. And that just
doesn't
doesn't,
even land, that was.
and that was without land costs. So, I mean, right away, it's like, thanks, but it's not feasible. So that's current market. So, hopefully that will change, but availability of space is getting tighter, right? I mean, Ball Ventures continues to eat up all kinds of land to the west, which again, I mean, it's positive. I want that to come out positive, but I mean, availability of enough land to do, to get 2, 3, 4 acres out of it is getting more challenging. I mean, the county is not interested in selling land, and we're not really interested, or we have not been traditionally, and with Mike and Adam involved in some of these conversations. Leasing by a government entity is a huge challenge, leasing land. So the recommendation is that the district would own land rather than lease it. So.
Questions on the kind of process or the kind of trajectory we're looking at? I mean, I'm anticipating between a 12% and 15% gross profit. This year, we're right about 19 right now, but we got the fall to come, and that'll probably kind of come down a little just because fall tends to be very busy, and we gotta pay staff a significant amount, and we'll have some overtime in the kitchen. We're trying to manage that. We've got a plan for that next year as well. But I'm anticipating gross profit margins to be between 12 and 15 for next year as well. Is what we're looking at, which is much better than we projected going into the budget last year. We were kind of looking at this as a single digit number potential. We've outperformed that due to managing space, the revenues, the expenses, so.
And what we were at, what, 35% previously?
We were, before we built Boise Center
Yeah.
East.
Yeah, okay.
Budget for this year was like 5.4%. And as Cody said, we're coming in probably about 20-ish.
Capital, we're looking at about 1.8 million in capital expenses for what we've got going.
But we're not spending all of our capital this year because we canceled some projects this year, or we had to roll them into next year. That were budgeted this year, but we had to roll them.
And our initial estimates are there'll be probably at least 2 million that would roll back to the district.
And budget for aquatic centers, you're keeping that separate account, separate, right?
Yes.
You're just stashing the rent money into a separate account for that, for any potential future expansion or improvement out on that
Capital or-
property.
I mean,
Capital.
You know, that's one thing that we need to talk about is whether we leave that just sitting there, or my thought is to move it over to the district and manage that piece of money with the district. So that it's getting invested instead of setting over in the other fund.
Mhm. But you would know how much would be in that account. Right? And you'd be moving that over to Clearwater.
Cause right now it's just continuing to grow as long, cause we funded our last piece this month.
So where are we at with that?
A little under 10.
Okay, so right now it's not enough to make a bit
Oh, I'm sorry, where are we at in the
in the
cash?
cash for,
I'm sorry, couple 100,000.
okay,
I thought you meant how much had we invested.
Yeah.
Total in the
no,
project.
how much do we have sitting in the bank account for aquatics? So at what point do you think you would wanna look at investing? Like what threshold and much do you wanna keep in the checking account for that?
I mean, I don't think we need more than $10,000 in the checking and just transfer it back over to the district.
And when you say transfer it to district, you're just talking about investing it, not necessarily. I mean, I guess I wanna officially keep that as aquatics money, right?
Separated out, is that what
Yeah.
you're thinking?
Well, you do transfer it, I mean, we do transfer it over to the general fund because that's where the Clearwater account is at. And it makes, but we can certainly do like a due from district and keep track of those transfers on the aquatic center
Right, cause I mean,
statement.
That would make sense to me because if we're gonna have to expense any capital.
cause
to
I don't
that
wanna use
facility,
aquatics money to improve the Boise Center.
Agreed, yeah, so,
Yeah, I'm sorry, you don't.
I don't wanna use aquatics money to like improve Boise Center.
or vice versa.
Oh,
With
you
the
would.
district.
you would do district level.
Right, but I mean, say it's at the district level and we're like, oh, we need,
Oh,
new carpet, or we're gonna do the
They're
ballroom
both
or
coming
whatever,
out, the fund both.
and then pull some of that money that was aquatics money and put it here. I don't wanna do that. Okay,
So I think if we were able to track what we've been putting in from the district side, I think that we could accomplish that, separated by just tracking what we've been depositing from aquatics.
I mean, we have the transfers already set up on the general ledger.
And that's probably a good question, at some point in time, we'll need to have a conversation about capital plan for
right,
aquatics.
yeah, what's
But they're
the,
responsible for,
All capital, even though we're the building owner?
Yep.
Okay. That's a great deal, actually.
can we get that deal again?
Well, let's just review the bid in here. We have 10, we're in 10 million.
9.6,
For the
The
aquatics,
revenues?
he's asking how deep they're into the aquatics, how much.
Oh,
What's our
10 million,
investment in the
sorry.
aquatic center?
A little under 10 million.
Well, under 10.
yeah, isn't it 9.6?
Yeah,
And our revenues are 5% of that,
$40,000 a month.
$500,000 a year. And were you saying we would restrict that 500,000?
I think we should use it, yes, I think that money should be aquatics money, right? For any future, if we wanna build a concessions or
Dive well,
meeting space or diving well or,
And I see where you're going, I mean,
Well, when we were drafting the agreements, it was my understanding is it's rent.
right,
We have an asset, they're renting it. and what we do with our rent proceeds.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I wanna know how much we've accumulated in rent. Say, you know, in 3 years, we've got 1.2 million that we've accumulated in rent from the aquatic center, then we can say, okay, maybe it makes sense to throw some money back into that and build a, you know, meeting space
Sure.
kitchen.
Something that could drive more revenue or.
Right,
yep, for more
right.
events.
I don't wanna ever lose track of that number on how much we've received from them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't
and
care
we
if you
would not.
invest it or whatever, but I wanna make sure that we know how much money we received in rent from the aquatics facility.
I think from a line item, Kristen, I mean, that will always be the case. But to the gross amount that's in the account, or the net, however we want to look at, whatever that's in our revenue, our cash revenue, or our cash account. If it's 10 million in the cash account, I mean, you'll always know that 1.2 came
Correct. From
from
aquatics, right?
aquatics. And it's more of a justification, may be the wrong word. It may be more of an explanation to somebody who would challenge the addition of meeting space and concessions at the aquatic center. Say, why would you do that? And you can always pull that number
Yes.
and say, you know, of the 10 million in our cash, 1.2 or whatever
Right,
is directly related. So
Yes.
we're getting an ROI and it makes sense for us to reinvest.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I would think you'd want to use that 1.2 to continue to draw interest from your investment account
Right,
as part
yes.
of,
that's fine. It's just, I guess I never wanna lose track of that number.
oh,
right.
no,
It's part of the financials.
Well, it's not the accounting concept of a restricted reserve. That's,
No, I don't think we need to go that far.
it's just
It's,
knowing
yes,
for analysis.
yes, and
To track it.
to track it and be like, gosh, you know, now, you know, if we, you know, talk with the aquatics folks and they're like, you know, it'd be really great and I think that we could attract more if we did X. We'll say, you know what, we've got this much money that has come from this, that, you know, can we do a project for, that would justify that amount? Yes, okay,
I don't think we,
Huh?
diving wells.
yeah, diving wells,
I'm recalling, I think like Pat, basically, the aquatics center was sold to us as a one-time deal. We need $6 million or whatever the initial number was.
Right.
Ended up to be $10 million. But that, and anything beyond that, Idaho Aquatics does. We would not have any involvement.
I think my understanding was we left the door open, they could come to us to see if we wanted to put in a diving well or put in
Concession.
concessions, catering facilities, cover that
Meeting
back lot,
space.
meeting space, whatever that would be.
But that would be some, and Judy, that was my concept early on was Idaho Aquatics would do that, but then when you take a look at what Salt Lake has and then build on the opportunity to use, you know, let's take the 110s, you know, or the 120, you know, that concept of broken up rooms, and then you have a full service kitchen. So that's those are your concessions, but then, and again, my thought would be that we would own and operate that as our own food and beverage outlet. If that was, I mean, theoretically, they could come and say, hey, you know, if you wanted, you know, we want to do this and then lease it out to a caterer or whatever else. Again, if we're getting the proceeds, I hate giving away money that I think we could, you know, do really well with on the catering side out there. But then again, that was just a high level concept at the time. Didn't implicate, you know, the aquatics people or anything else. That was just my 2 cents worth as we were looking at the
I'm
land.
just thinking, I just wanted to, the board attitude. But our board is universally supportive of growing.
Right, and there's about an acre of land, I think, right, about an acre of land left out there,
Getting bigger
that
in
we could,
whatever way.
whatever,
is
if
appropriate.
there's something that we can add to that project that would continue to increase revenue for everybody, then let's look at it, right? Whether it's a new pool or, you know,
But
meeting space or
my
kitchen
point-
or,
My point is that the $500,000 a year that the aquatics people pay us rent
Uh-huh.
was never intended as building a business. We build our business with bonding capacity and other ways we get revenue. The rent 5%, which is bargain forever. There's no accelerator in it or anything else. So that was intended to cover the opportunity cost of not having the money in the bank. And it was a wash.
Mhm.
And the board is all for any project. But tying it to the amount of aquatics rent, I think is not consistent. It's fine. I mean, it's numbers, you know. We want to build a concession that costs $2 million, you know. Make $500,000 a year on aquatics, but we're not really, we're just covering our opportunity costs.
And I think once, I mean,
It is, just while we're all privately in this room, we're all comfortable that they know what they're doing and we're proceeding on plan and we're not gonna get stuck with some big problem.
In fact, Ryan's not gonna make the meeting next week, but I asked him to shoot me over some updated stats as to where they are, but I mean, the first two events that they held exceeded all kinds of expectations, room nights, I think they had about 4,000 total room nights between the two events.
2 million impact. I'm out there every week. And I'd encourage you to stop by anytime after 4:30 because it's bananas.
I'm sorry.
It's bananas. There are so many people in there. There's every inch of pool space is being used. Couldn't find a parking space yesterday. I mean, it's very busy.
I have a good friend's wife that manages the Walgreens right there at that corner, and she said that they just have to restock every time they have an event there because they wipe them out, literally off their shelves.
That's good.
Yes.
I mean,
So
you
they-
want
Well,
that.
it may have become more than we anticipated. when we
Absolutely.
agreed to do it.
Last time, and I chat with Nick because he's there.
He's the
He's
coach.
their operations, I guess, person. I don't know.
Nick
what his-
Caggiano, he's the guy who's presented
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah, and he said that they now have, I mean, it's like 1,000 kids on the wait list and they're up to like 8, and over 800 kids actually in lessons. They're trying to figure out how to get more instructors, number one, and figure out pool space because lessons really pick up at that 4:30, when parents are getting 4:30 to 6 is really a good lesson time, but that's also when the high schoolers are in their training. I mean, there's BK, yesterday there was BK, Boise High, and then the other swim. I mean, I'm super impressed with how they're managing it.
And your interaction is as the landlord.
Well, Aiden's taking swim lessons out there,
Yeah,
so
I know, but
yeah.
you don't see us more actively involved in.
we
their
don't need to be.
management
They
than we are.
They have got it covered. They know swim. They know that they have the connections. I wouldn't even want to get in their way.
And we're the same way at the management level.
Yes, sir.
That's why I think that's a really great partnership. We've talked about this. It's just that it's the right people. They know their business.
Yeah,
We don't
that's
need to
evolving.
operate a pool.
Yeah.
That's new. That's it.
And they're required in February to come to the board with an annual assessment of how many room nights were generated, the value of the room nights, because again, that's when the
Rent gets adjusted.
rent, yeah. So, but
And I think they're thinking out of the box. They even have is it on the field, off the field, some fitness place that has set up some stuff out in the back and on the deck. So they're like,
Do physical therapy, they
they're making
square feet,
use
I
of
think.
every space. Have you been out there recently?
I just heard about that, but I was
Okay.
talking to Ryan about how that they were gonna do physical therapy along the sides or outside on the turf there from that group, so.
So, yeah, I 100% think they know what they're doing.
Good discussion.
I think they were doing yoga classes on the side of the pool in the mornings.
Huh.
They talked about talking to a yoga instructor that wanted to come in and, because they got the locker facilities.
Mhm.
So they could do their mat. I'm not a yoga person. never done it, but they could do their mats out on the side of the pool. And they could do it outside on the lawn, or they could do it inside, depending on weather, but good classes in the morning.
And they're going to be putting, I think, some like crushed asphalt or something down in the parking facility behind, closer to the Walgreens and the truck stop side, because that is full. And so people are kind of parking in dirt, and they said that if they add this kind of asphalt stuff, it'll kind of start to compact and be a little more friendly to drive, because there's a very lack of parking out there now. So I think they're thinking how they can continue to improve things.
So I was curious to hearing that from the neighbor side, from the Walgreens, that they've
That is
actually
interesting,
really
yeah.
liked that they, and it's actually moving the store up onto, like, they rank their stores based on revenue. That store is climbing in revenue right now because the aquatic centers.
That's great. We want to be good neighbors, right?
When I spoke to the capital side, we're looking at 1.8, but I just want to continue to say thank you to the board for the support on the capital side, because that's something, we've got a large carpet wall covering project over in East this year that's going to happen in December. That's the one that was transferring. We tried to look at summer months were getting more impacted by events. So we jumped into the December holiday season during that kind of Christmas time. So we'll start that project in December. It'll finish up in early January over there on the east side. And then that's kind of following over. We're looking at changing one more neutral. I know we've had this conversation. The client's feedback from years and years has been they like more neutral space inside the ballroom, so that way if they want to do a color themed something, that the carpet doesn't play against that or go against that. So I'm going much more neutral, and you'll start seeing that come over because we're doing a phased out approach with the carpet and wall coverings as we do about every 7 years. We pushed that out a year because COVID, we didn't have a lot of use on the building, so we're about 8 in some of those turnarounds. And then we're going to get over to the 200 space, which is this space here, in fiscal year 24, and then 25 will be the ballroom and the main lobby of the west building. So you'll start seeing that carpet transition come through.
Any other big expenses, like you need to replace boilers or?
We did the chiller a couple years ago. Roof is still doing all right. Those are the real big stuff. East, again, you're gonna have, it's not to that point yet where we got anything real large that, but in the next 10 years, yes, East is gonna start hitting some of that. The west building will be, that's a 30-year on the roof on the west side. That's a large expense, but those are built out. We do a 20-year capital plan, and we can see year to year when we're gonna have fluctuations, and we try really hard to kind of maneuver things to try to stay within that 2 million range. But there are some years where it's a little over 2 million, or some years that it's under 2 million based on how large those bigger projects, whether it's chiller or not. For the
And
most
I know
part,
that escalators and elevator maintenance is really,
that's one that
and it-
continues to go up,
right.
and that's a hard expense to manage. We need to have them, but it's something that I'm wishing I would have gone into that business at some point in time when I was younger, because it's a lucrative business, at least it appears to be. So yeah, and then if you have issues over weekends or nights, sort of ready to come down and fix, and they seem to only go down at that time, so I'm trying to.
And Ray, what's our total capital compared to our depreciation annually?
Oh, let's see, fixed assets are probably around 60 million, and our depreciation's runs about 2.
Which is about what we spend on capital.
something that I'm thinking about, and I'll wait until we get the numbers, but might want to see some like trend lines on some of these larger items, just ever since we opened East. You know, I'll let you know, once I get my eyes on the numbers.
I mean, that's the one thing I'm really proud of the team, in particular, this new Questica budgeting software. We have better data than we've ever had before, and it's finally coming post-COVID. There's obviously some blips in data just because of that. We're able to start using this data in a much more efficient way, where I feel that's where I'm confident going into this, with this idea that there might be some variances month to month that I need to speak to, but I want to use it as a management tool. I want to aim for something that I think is realistic on a budget, and that's how I'm going into this year. And so.
And maybe you can talk to it now. Is there anything that has had a large increase or decrease over the years, either revenue or expense wise, ever since we opened East?
Maintenance of the elevators and escalators easily is the biggest one, biggest expense. We've got a project that we're gonna need on. If you've seen some of the windows over in East, we bought that U glass, that's that self-tinting glass.
Mhm.
We're in the process of trying to figure out, because there is a manufacturer warranty to replace the glass itself, but getting the cost to actual labor to replace it is not covered under the warranty, which is a boom lift that needs to reach out, because there's a lid for the VRT over on the plaza. That means a very big boom lift needs to reach out and grab those pieces of glass. And we have a choice, and I'm working through whether it's an insurance claim or not, to replace them all at once, because they're all gonna eventually fail. We're on generation one. They're covered under warranty only once they fail. So now you have the cost of bringing out that boom lift, the labor, one at a time, two at a time, five at a time. And then you got windows with bubbles that doesn't look very good. So we're kind of evaluating what's the most efficient, most way to not disrupt events, but still try to save some money on that cost there.
And so when you say it fails, it bubbles?
It is, there's a film that's basically, or it's a gas that's in between the two pieces of glass is how that tints. And the generation one is failing, they recognized it, and now they're saying, yes, we will replace them, but it doesn't come with the labor, the cost of the boom lift, any of that. So they'll send us the glass and replace that at no cost. It's new generation, which I'm hearing doesn't have the same failure issue, so we wouldn't have that problem in the future, at least that they know of until.
And how many pieces of window?
Right now, we're sitting on like 8 or 9, but it's gonna continue to fail.
No, but
So
how many total that are potentially going to fail?
I'd have to- 47, I don't have that one in my head, that's it, I'd have to go back and look at the total wall over there.
Yes,
Yeah,
so does it make sense to just bite the bullet and, try to negotiate with the manufacturer to say, look, if we know all the windows are gonna fail,
right.
then let's just give us the windows or give us the glass, and then it's a one-time, potentially a one-time cost for the boom lift, labor and all that stuff, so you eat it all at one time.
Right.
And you incrementally lower that cost. I mean, it's a high initial cost, but you don't repeat the cost over 5
Right.
years.
Yeah, cause if I wait till they fail, you got the guest experience problem now, it's like, okay, the windows don't look great, and I do get the replacement now paid for, but it seems to make more sense right now in the way that we're evaluating this to do it kind of in a phased out approach where we just take the ones that we know are all bad, we're gonna get those taken off the bill right off the top and then replace all of them, just so that way we don't have that continual boom lift labor cost and then impact.
Well, right, and how many times are you gonna have to have
Open a
open
window
windows?
and.
Right,
Exactly. So that's the one over in the east side that I'm seeing that's causing definitely some concern, but overall, it's holding together and we're part of that condominium agreement, so I think we get a little bit of, if there is issues with some of that equipment on the condominium side, that's taken care of under that, so.
economy wise, what do you guys think? I mean, I know we're just talking about budget for next year, but when you're looking at projections, look at those.
All indications are that we're still there's still a potential for a recession, but we're booked. And so, and the odds of cancellation of anybody because of a recession, now maybe the meetings might be smaller because maybe companies are tightening their belt and they're not sending as many people out. But at least from the revenue where we see it today, it doesn't look like there's any negative impact. And like they were saying, even in 2025 is looking up.
There's been some interesting arm wrestling meetings about spring of 2025 already between the event managers and the sales team. Spring of 25 is,
Spring 25, yeah, it tends to fill up just right away with all the annuals, there's lots of banquets, we know we have, a handful of weeks we can sell to conventions. I mean, I think the good news is we've done a fantastic job of filling in lead months. July and August have become, July in particular has become a great month for conventions because we don't have a lot of competition with local events. And so we know that moving forward, like where we can focus on filling in with the conventions.
I mean, and that's where, a big chunk of our revenue increases have come from is, I can remember one year, July was like $15,000 was the total revenue, except for so remember Sam had the contract with the Forest Service to deliver sandwiches to a fire, and so we ended up with 45,000 in revenue. I mean, they've always been our dog, right, the dog days of summer, and they're not. This year they were not.
As a former operational guy, that pinches the operations team, because those were our months to really get in and get projects done. So the building now, there's a lot more labor that happens in the middle of the night or that kind of stuff that has to happen when you don't have dark time like that, so.
And Far West is not coming back in 24.
Correct.
What about 25? Do you know? Because
I think we'll get one of those big soccer tournaments, whether it's Far West or President's Cup, back in 25.
So how does that affect your booking for that as far as hotel room space?
Well, those weeks in June, we do have a couple conventions that have always kind of competed for rooms during the soccer tournaments. Cities is one of them, and I think one of our school associations, and so they're happy, right? But when it does come back, that's where we look. I mean, it's similar to Big Sky. We want to push the local events to take place during those sport tournaments that take over the hotel rooms. So then, we're just maximizing our calendar.
But I mean, you're not holding out, waiting for them to decide.
Well, the other thing is hopefully Lucas from the CVB or Visit Boise, and Nick Gaggiano can work together. I mean, if they're not having soccer tournaments next June, it's a great opportunity to get swim meets in. Because the room rates, hopefully will be much more realistic. I mean, when Far West is here, they're $400 a night in the hotels. Don't see that happening next year. So what a great opportunity for the Aquatic Center to try to book, a couple of tournaments over those 2 weekends.
And I don't know, I haven't heard, but I know that second swim meet that came to town, they wanted to come back again. I know they were trying to get that. So,
There were several records broken
yeah,
in the first one.
yeah.
I think a couple in the second.
And I think there were like, 3 or 4 or 6, some kids that qualified for Olympic trials. So.
That's water. Good news. Any
Anything
other
else?
information that you guys are looking for, or want to see in the final, like, put together the
Now, this is, you were asking about the process. I like this process. I like this sort of strategic conversation. And then sometime in October, we'll have another meeting with numbers.
And is your
prior to the board meeting.
contract with the CVB figured out and in the budget? And
We're in discussions with them now.
okay,
Taking a look at goals and that sort of thing. And in fact, we've had conversation with Lucas's. Lucas is the sports manager for the CVB. How to quantify his involvement. What we wrestle with is, the aquatic, any room nights generated don't help Boise Center directly. And the contract is with the CVB to generate business for us. So how to, do we even want to get into that conversation about spin-off business? So. But we still want Lucas to help book and support the aquatic center.
yeah, it sounds like from the Aquatic Center folks side that they've been really helpful to them. So,
had our initial meeting with Carrie and the team. Feel good about where we're going with that for sure.
I think
And the
it's-
aquatic center really has evolved. I mean, one of the big sales features initially, I remember Jim pounding us on his $5 million bite size, it's not gonna be a big deal. But it's now 20% of our assets, right? And is taking at least 20% of our time. Which I assume will not continue, but
yeah,
or it may expand.
we have the option, right? Yeah, see where it goes. Anything
Plan
else
is that
from-
we'll have some initial numbers for board meeting, right?
Well, yeah, we'll pass, the chart that I've done in the past with the color coding and stuff, we'll have that ready.
And I think that'll prompt more questions and stuff to you guys.
Although it never
Has, but yeah,
but maybe with Chase and Tim, they may have more questions.
Cash,
Pardon?
year-end cash,
I'm sorry.
year-end cash. Forecast,
Oh,
without the reserves.
look here.
13.
I can't remember.
I
I
think
see
13 or
so
14.
many numbers in a day, especially during budget, and most of them are line items, and it's like sometimes the big picture escapes.
I think you're right.
You have access to the
I
board
know,
report.
yep.
and how is it working with Clearwater Financial, the investment reporting, helpful?
Yes, I mean, I can keep track of what's going on. I can go in and look and see how much cash is not invested or invested. Yeah. I mean, it's just been a great
I
relationship.
thought there was 20 million.
Oh. without reserves, okay? It's
Reserves are about 6 million, so it'd be,
20 million.
but let me look here and I can tell you.
The October board meeting is gonna be a long meeting.
And what's the date on that?
24th.
I think I wanna say the 24th, that's a Monday, it sounds like, I could be wrong. No, I think it's 24th.
It's next Friday, Thursday?
No, October.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the 24th.
Madam Chair, I mean, TM Jim and Chase are, they're fine with us doing this part of it and
Oh,
they just
yeah.
get the.
Yep.
And if they want more, they can have, it.
Yep.
That's kind of the way it's set up.
Both team and Chase reached out when I sent the meeting announcement out, that they didn't have it on their schedule and, you know, do they need to
Would have
be
been
here?
okay.
And I said, this is the process. It changed this year to
Make sure that we're.
make sure it's more, you know, just full transparency stuff. And I said, you're welcome to be there. I said, it's a scheduled meeting. I said, you know, so you certainly can be there if you wish, but, and I said, the finance committee traditionally has been relied on to run this. They both said, no, but, so they support you both.
So we budgeted right now to, at the end of August, it's 16,000 and that includes 6,000.
16 million.
Sorry, 16 million. And that includes the $6 million in reserves. We're at 24 million at the end of August. So if you take and add, if we're gonna give 2 million back to the district, that'd put you at 27, 26, 27 million at the end of next year. One of the, I did
Just
have.
in honor of High.
In honor of High.
Always wanted to know and
Well, and I did have, a thought occurred to me, you know, in the board report where we show the cash part, what if we put the debt outstanding? Because we show all this cash, but what we're not showing is how much we owe.
Oh, yeah, I think that's good. I
And
think
that,
that'd be good.
and of course, when we do that, then you'll be negative, but at least it shows that
Right.
that money is committed, even if it was to refund debt or pay debt off.
How much more do we, how what was the term on that?
It was
Years.
20 years.
20?
Yeah, and so it's next year, 2024. It's that 10-year benchmark that you can actually start buying debt. You can pay debt back. There was a 10-year moratorium where you couldn't buy down
Right.
debt. So you could.
Do you know the outstanding amount?
Although it, yeah, I mean, if you're looking at another project down the road that you would go bond, it would make no sense.
would make no
To
sense.
pay this
Right.
debt off, which, you know, that's one of the things, whatever project we do, if we want a bond, we have to be, right, in a
Junior,
in a district that hasn't sunset.
right,
If we're gonna, if we, our intent would be to bond with CDC like we did east.
right.
And see, we can't bond here because this is
Sunset.
sunsetted.
So it always has to go through.
Well, it has to go through something to issue bonds, whether it's CCDC or some other third party. Correct?
That's what I was thinking, we talked about that.
Chase will talk about this next week, but we had a follow-up meeting yesterday, you know, because we let CWI know that we couldn't do a meeting space with it. But as you've requested that we take a look at, you know, what the cost per square foot is for a performing arts center, you know, theoretically. Theoretically, we've been playing with cost per square foot for an indoor multi-purpose sports facility.
Which I would assume would be less, right?
Correct, where I'm going is that, you know, as Chase indicated in his email, that the construction of a meeting facility isn't feasible. Perhaps an indoor multi-purpose sports facility is.
And I know in a conversation several years ago, I know we were worried about junior debt being an issue, but it doesn't sound like it is an issue.
What's the question, sorry?
Junior debt.
Well, I think Mike was saying that we could refinance the current bonds to get some of the covenant released, because the covenant says we have to have it 2 times tax revenue coverage.
Mhm.
And so he thought if you refinanced, you could maybe get that dropped, which would allow you to issue more debt than what we currently can. But again, you gotta find, have the third party to issue the bonds and do the lease with us.
You also need to make sure you have the money to pay it. So just because you can get X
Oh,
number of-
exactly. Well, that's
doesn't
what-
matter.
yeah.
You can't pay the bills. So
Like I said, given the market as it is right now, I think we're flattening, which isn't, again, not necessarily bad, but this huge incremental growth we've been able to see since COVID. I think just the market conditions are what they are at this point.
okay. Board numbers,
See you in October.
Thank you, board.
September, next week. You're gone, right? Forgot.
Safe travel. How long are you gonna be in Spain? Good for you.
When are you back from Spain?
I'm sorry,
What's your date you're back from Spain?
16th. Meeting's on the 24th. So we'd have a meeting maybe 17th or 18th or something like that.
We'll give you a day to get past jet lag. You wanna end the meeting?
See, no other business for the board, meeting's adjourned.
Madam Chair.
IT side.